Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. But on the side, I have the best opportunities to talk to some of the biggest leaders in our community, and today is no different. So I am super excited today. I'd like to welcome Jim Keys, global business leader, philanthropist, educator, artist, musician, commercial pilot, and just modern Renaissance man. He is the former CEO of two internationally recognized Fortune 500 companies, 7-Eleven and Blockbuster. Jim has had a lifelong commitment to education, serving as a founding director of the Dallas Education Foundation and is the founder of the Education is Freedom Foundation. He recently released his book, Education is Freedom. We'll talk a little bit about that today, outlining how embracing a learning mentality will empower you and set you free. Thanks for joining us today, Jim.
Thank you. I'm feeling like a VIP.
You are a VIP. This is so amazing. And I'm not kidding. I am so fortunate that I get to sit down with great leaders like you, pick your brain, and then share that with our entire community. So tell us a little bit about your story, because you didn't have the average, upbringing that everybody else had.
No, I wasn't exactly a silver spoon kid. I actually, the reason that I wrote this book called Education is Freedom is I attribute everything that I have had in life, and I have had an amazing life. Every day is a new adventure for me. And I can attribute that clearly to the power of education, because I literally grew up without running water. I wouldn't call it poverty, because I didn't know even what that was. I didn't have any idea what poverty was. But the freedom that I today enjoy all came from lifting myself out of that situation through learning, through education.
So who taught you to learn? Because that's not something that comes naturally for everybody.
It is not. In fact, the whole purpose of this book is, I call it learning to learn, because I had to learn to learn. And there's a process to it. It's like anything else. And I didn't have anyone to teach me to learn. My parents didn't really know how. They both dropped out of school, I think, by the fifth or sixth grade, literally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, hardworking factory workers, very smart, but this is a long time ago. This is probably in the 1930s when they were growing up, and they just didn't have the kinds of opportunity and had to go to work, so they did. So they didn't really know what to teach me. They didn't know how to teach me how to learn. But what they did give me was a complete appreciation for the importance of learning.
How did they do that? What can you think of one time that they motivated you to learn to live life differently than they did?
Well, I'll give you an example. It's kind of a harsh example, but my dad used to say, son, they can't take your knowledge away. It's the only thing. They can take your car, they can take your money, they can take your house. They can take your health. Your health is fragile and it can go away, but what you will have that throughout your life, and you can do anything with that. And that's what he used to say. Now, we'll dial forward. My dad got sick. They came for our house. They literally condemned my house. I was walking home from school at about 11 years old and saw a red sign tacked on the door. And this was a 3-room shack with no plumbing. So
wow.
It wasn't surprising. And he had been cared for by the city or the town health nurse department, saw the way we were living, and apparently reported it to the town. They came in and they condemned the house. So they did. So I lived through example. They did take our house. They did take our car. I did lose my dad to health, and I realized that there really was no safety net for me, and that while they could clearly take those things, they couldn't take what I knew. And the more I knew, the more I could do. And so I took my dad and my mother's advice very literally and just poured myself into the books and knowledge. And man, did it pay off.
Absolutely. So take us through your career, because, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, he's so lucky. It was magical. And I don't think it was anything like that. So take us just very quickly through that timeline of how you went from living in a condemned house to being CEO of 7-Eleven.
Yeah, it was first an academic journey. So there was the teachers in high school that took me aside, that encouraged me, that gave me the confidence, all of the things taught me to learn at that level anyway. And that was an important piece of the puzzle. Then I was fortunate enough to get into a local college so that I could afford the tuition. I couldn't afford room and board and tuition, but I at least could afford the tuition, so I would commute back and forth. From there, I was fortunate enough to get into graduate school, got into Columbia Graduate School of Business by some miracle.
Wow.
Showed up in a bell bottoms about that wide and a powder blue suit that I thought I was pretty hip.
Oh, that we had a picture of that right now.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think they let me in because I looked like a clown. They had to. I'm not sure. But yeah, out of Columbia, ended up with a role at Gulf Oil, working for the chief financial officer. Timing was good. It was just as PCs came out. People thought I was a wizard because I had an Apple, and I was able to run analyses on a PC faster than people could do it with spreadsheets and a calculator.
Early adopter, huh?
I was an early adopter, yeah.
Maybe that's a good lesson to take away from this.
I have a lot of lessons about change and adopting change, embracing change. So yeah, absolutely. And from Gulf was my first real job, but as an oil company, I was kind of a fish out of water. I was not a chemical engineer, electrical engineer. I was a political science major undergraduate with a business degree, but I wasn't a great fit for Gulf. But they merged with Chevron, and about that time, 7-Eleven bought an oil company, the Southland Corporation, called Citgo Petroleum, and they needed help. And they brought in a gentleman from Gulf to be CEO. He grabbed me and my PC and said, come help us do a turnaround over here. And we did. I was the head of strategic planning for Citgo Petroleum as my first role within the Southland Corporation. We sold Citgo. The Thompson family asked me to stay and lead the retail gasoline business for 7-Eleven, which I did. And then I had a series of chairs from heading retail gasoline to head of strategic planning, CFO, chief operating officer, and ultimately chief executive. It was quite a run.
I did not know that you sat in the CFO seat.
I did.
That's interesting with your background.
Yeah. Trust me. I was an unlikely CFO.
Yeah?
Literally, there's a great story here because we had just come through a bankruptcy, a financial restructuring. The company was really struggling for a period of time. And
What span was this?
This was 1991.
Okay.
And we needed to cut G&A. And that's a hard thing, especially for people that have been in a company for a long time.
So tell people what G&A is.
General and administrative expenses.
Okay.
We needed to cut costs, right?
Okay.
So
bottom line.
Yeah, and I had actually done a lot of that work at Gulf Oil, so I understood the importance of expense reduction, particularly at that time. Companies in the early 90s were going through a lot of financial stress. 1987 was when the market crashed. And so there was a need to be crisp with our expenses. And I literally wrote a letter to the CEO at the time and said, here's what I think we need to do. And I listed about $50 million of things that could and should be cut.
Before you're CFO?
Before I was CFO,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, I was in the role of planning. So
Yep.
it was kind of a natural extension. I said, these are cuts that really need to be made. And we had corporate jets still. We were, kind of living a little bit of of a public company life, but now we were much more modest.
Yes.
In a much more modest situation and struggling for cash flow. So bottom line is they ended up saying, yes, we need to do that. Come in, do it. We'll give you the role of senior vice president of finance first. And then one day they announced that I was going to be CFO. And I literally went home, said to my wife, uh-oh. Do you remember where we put those old accounting books from business school? Because I don't know if the debit is on the left or the right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, seriously. I was a little nervous about it.
But as CFO, it's more strategic, right? It's more looking forward. It's more
be,
finance and not necessarily the accounting piece, but still.
I had a really good audit partner and a really good controller, so I was fine. And it was I approached it as a strategic role, so it was fine. But there's a really important lesson here that I capture in the book. People have to get out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Change is opportunity. I've coined the expression CEO.
I love that.
Yeah, change equals opportunity. And I had that throughout my career. I flipped from the financial side to the operating side. Now, was I scared? Yeah. The insecurities, can I do this? Yeah, but I learned as I did it. And then I flipped back to the financial side. And then I flipped back to the operating side. And that getting out of your comfort zone and embracing change is something that, let's face it, most of us are really not very good at.
You know, I think that is such a great lesson. So may I share just a little bit about my journey?
Please.
Because before we started, I told you I'm non-traditional. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I'm in my second career.
Yeah.
My first career was accounting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you know that debit's on the left and credit's
I used to. I tried to forget. It's been like 11 years. So, but here's the thing. I was in accounting for 20 years. I was a CFO. And I had been with the company for 13 years, and it got to the point, the company ended up closing, so didn't save them. But, and so I was looking.
Been there.
You're right. Right. It's not all roses when you're CFO.
It happens.
Yeah. There's some things, you embrace the change, but some things you just can't fix, right?
Right.
And so I went to a recruiter to look for a new job and didn't have my CPA at the time. And still don't. That's part of the story. But I was looking for roles, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm, at this far in my career, making what I'm making now, everywhere I look, they want a CPA for these roles. And so non-traditional, kind of like you, now, I mean, we work with 7-Eleven. They're one of our clients. Mm-hmm. And, if we were to replace a CFO at that level now, they'd be like, yeah, they got an MBA in finance and, finance undergrad. Then if we brought somebody like you, they would be like, y'all are crazy,
Right.
What the heck are y'all doing over there?
Right.
But what I love about what you're saying is, like, when I went to that recruiter, she was like, Casey, you are so misaligned in your career. You are not an accountant. And I'm like, you're not a finance person. And I'm like, I've been doing this for years and I'm pretty darn good at it. And she's like, that's not what I mean. You can do it. You're just not wired to do it. Mm-hmm. And so she introduced this whole concept of recruiting to me. And I mean, I'm like, work on commission instead of, a paycheck every month.
Scary.
It is scary because I was used to having a budget, right? And I had a family and I was like, I don't know. But I did it. Never looked back. Mm-hmm. And so I agree, that change equals opportunity. It's been the best thing in the world. I mean, look at me now. I have a podcast.
Yeah. You got out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And learned. You had to learn. And you kept learning.
I am a consummate student. I love, love, love to learn. And we were talking before the show a little bit about traditional, school, going to college versus vocational and all that kind of stuff. And I know you've got some pretty strong beliefs around that. I do too. So I would love to hear your thoughts on education today and where you think this movement is going, because there is a real strong push towards trade schools and vocation.
There is. And first of all, let me start by saying any learning is good learning. So if you want to be in a vocation, be the best. Learn as much as you can, because the more you learn, the more you can do. Now, this narrative that's out there, I've been doing, I think because my book is called Education is Freedom, I get a lot of conservative talk shows. And especially on the conservative talk shows, you're hearing a lot of this narrative that, yeah, college is terrible now, and they're indoctrinating our kids in these liberal institutions and blah, 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 blah. And I stopped these hosts. I was on Brian Kilmeade's show. And I had
really?
Well, I happened to go to Columbia. So his first question is, aren't you horrified what's going on at Columbia?
Yes.
And I said, Brian, no. This is part of the learning process. And there's never a place for violence, never a place for hatred.
Yep.
Or racism, or anti-Semitism. That is, take that off the table. So, no, there's no room for that. But expression, freedom of speech, yes, kids are expressing themselves. I grew up in the 60s when we had, kids protesting the Vietnam War. We didn't know we were protesting. Nobody was telling us we should protest the Vietnam. We didn't have teachers indoctrinating us. We just thought it was a day out of school if we walked out of school. It was that silly. And there's a lot of that stuff going on today. But we've got to be careful not to overreact to that and throw out what is the best secondary and post-secondary education system in the world. People from all over the world send their children to the United States to get the finest education, and we're bashing it, our own system. This is what made America great. It's what made America the best. By educating our people, our kids came back from World War II, took advantage of the GI Bill, went to college. We had off-the-charts graduation rates from college. It propelled our businesses to greatness and success. And now, all of a sudden, we've adopted this attitude in the information age, much less, when education is more important than ever. We've adopted this goofy attitude. College is not important. It's irrelevant today. All they need to do is go get a trade. And it's dangerous, I'm telling you, for global competitiveness and for the individual. One last thing, it's so important. College is not for everybody, but opportunity is. That's the American dream. And the key to opportunity is learning as much as you can. And you said it yourself. If you didn't have a CPA today, if you didn't have an accounting degree today, who's going to hire you to be an accountant?
Yep.
So that's practical reality. So we can say all we want that degrees aren't important. That's a disservice to these children that are growing up.
Yeah.
Who will need a degree at some point, especially 20, 30 years from now.
I think that's a really good point, because one of the things that when I was looking for a job, I'd been in the same role for 13 years, right? And I went to this recruiter and she's like, so what industry were you in? And I was like, well, I was in governmental because I worked with schools. And she's like, oh, that's like, it's so hard. That's such a different type of accounting. But I'd been in it for so long and I'd gone to school for that. I was like, accounting is accounting. Let me tell you something. I have learned more recruiting about accounting than I ever learned in accounting school or doing accounting.
Sure.
Because accounting is not accounting. There's many, many different types of accounting that are very specific. And so it's not only the degree, but it's the experience. So like, for example, when we're searching for like some of our private equity, I need fund accountants. And they want them to have CPAs. And the first pushback I get from people is like, but I'm not doing public accounting. And I'm like, but it's a publicly traded company. Or even if it's a private company, they still want that CPA because they want that peace of mind. So, I mean, I get it. And yeah, I mean, most of my clients will not hire an accountant without an accounting degree, not even a business degree.
Right. Well, and that's the practical side that people are forgetting. That someday, let's dial forward 20, 30 years from now, we'll have technology that can measure skills without a formal degree.
Yes.
Because the technology will eventually come around to that. But that's not in the immediate horizon, on the immediate horizon. And until that happens, having had 400,000 employees, how in the world would I differentiate between employee A and employee B without a degree, without some formalized measurement system? So it's easy to say, oh yeah, they don't need it. Just go be an entrepreneur. Peter Thiel, yeah, he was very successful. It's like Michael Jordan saying, just go be a basketball player, right? I mean, some of us are outliers. I probably could have done okay without a degree. Maybe, maybe not, because I'm that persistent and aggressive. But most of us need the structure and discipline to learn in a formal education environment to be able to unlock those opportunities and be successful. The average person isn't out there as an entrepreneur.
This is very true. And I will tell you, I wanted to mention to you because, like I said, I'm a consummate student and I do have some differing beliefs on education, although, I'm very proud to say, I shared with you earlier, my son is about to graduate next week, and this has been a 10-year process to get him to go back to school because I do believe it's important, non-traditional or not. I'm non-traditional. I didn't go back and get my degree until my late 20s. Had a family first, and I'm fine with that, know. But I still did it, I knew the value. Both of my parents were first generation college graduates. And so for them, it was very important. So all three of us, I have two younger sisters, all have degrees, and one an advanced degree. I decided instead of doing an advanced degree, because I'm very big on putting tools in my tool belt, I go for specific skill sets.
Sure.
So I go for certifications rather than degrees. And
Works.
yeah, and I was going to go for a degree, but I was like, I don't need that class, I don't need that class, I don't need that class. I just want that one right there, know? And so for graduate, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It does. And at the end of the day, again, I've got to come back to just as long as you learn, as long as you keep putting tools in your tool belt, it's not critical in terms of which tools they are, as long as you've got a full tool belt. Now, where I think a lot of people are missing the opportunity, there's also a tendency to want to specialize today. So
yes.
Let's drill down deep. But here's the concern that I have, is that back during the Renaissance, people were broad. The philosophers studied humanities, they studied logic, they studied the arts, they studied math, science. Today, there's a tendency to specialize, right? But the irony is, as we get into the information age, even deeper, AI can come in, and there's not a vertical that technology isn't going to be able to go deeper than humans.
Yep.
So if humans aren't broad and that job goes away, then what? You don't have the ability to pivot. And so what I'm telling kids is, man, the liberal arts education, the more broad you can be, that means the more optionality you'll have and the ability to pivot. If you're a pilot and you don't have anything but that degree, and technology comes in and has automated aircraft.
People are flying them like like they're playing video games.
Now what are you
Control
going to do?
center.
But if you've got a broad background and you're a pilot still, fine. Then you can pivot and you can be an administrator of an aviation firm or something. But it's that optionality that I think people are missing as we go into the future. It'll be critically important as technology continues to advance.
One thing I like to share with my candidates and all the young executives that I work with is I think it's so important, though, that you really find your passion. You seem to have found your passion early. Was there someone along the way that helped you develop that passion, or was it just always innate?
But again, I'm going to tell you another story because this is why it's important to go broad, especially for kids that are young in high school. I thought I was going to be a doctor.
Okay.
I would have made a horrible doctor. I can't even imagine. I don't even like looking at blood. It's like,
You start talking about gross stuff with me, and I'm like,
yeah, gross stuff.
No.
Man, doctors do gross things.
They
I don't want
do.
any part of that, right? So then, now, I had no frame of reference. I grew up, there was no big business where I was. That was the factory. So I grew up, I didn't want to be in business. I thought, okay, well, if I can't be a doctor, and I literally applied pre-med, and they turned me down. So, okay.
Thank God for small favors.
Yeah,
right?
I know. So I said, well, maybe I'll be a lawyer, because they wear suits, right? That looks important.
Yep.
I was clueless as a kid, and I had a professor come in and intercept me on my way to law school, literally, and say, please get an MBA, because you'll be a far better business person than a lawyer. I'm probably too ADD to be dealing with contracts. And he was right. Thank goodness I had the ability to pivot and had not specialized, because if I had been chemistry, bio, etc., I never would have ended up as CEO of 7-Eleven, and I couldn't have pivoted in my career to something I was more passionate about.
And how long did you run 7-Eleven?
Well, I was there 21 years and had the privilege of leading it for the last 5 or 6. Wow. Until we sold it in 2005 to our largest licensee in Japan.
That is an incredible tenure.
It was a great career. I loved my time at 7-Eleven. Now, it wasn't all rosy. We had ups and downs.
Yeah.
Remember, we were bankrupt.
Yep.
And there were a lot of people that were quitting, and a lot of people thought the company was going to go away. I kept my head up. I learned, back to that change equals opportunity, that it has the changes are relevant. Change is part of business. It's the origin of commerce. Something changes and someone else comes in and satisfies the demand. So I learned from that experience that change is irrelevant. It's the response to change that makes all the difference in the world.
That's amazing. So I want to talk about, just real quick before we run out of time, because you are like the epitome of a learner.
Yeah. I try.
I know. I mean, so let me just make sure I don't miss anything. You've been a pilot for 40 years.
Yeah.
You're a sculptor. I didn't know that. A painter, a musician, a composer.
I'm not good at any of this stuff. Yeah.
But that's okay.
No. Here's why I'm a composer, because I kind of suck at music.
I doubt that.
No. I can play the piano. I can play the guitar. Yeah, I learned the trumpet in the early back as a kid. But what I found is if you write your own music, nobody knows if it's a mistake. It's like, no, I meant that.
So I'm actually relearning the piano. I learned as a child. I played many, many years. So I'm playing the piano. I'm just falling absolutely in love with it. But you know what else I'm doing? Because I'm actually in school for neuro-linguistic programming right now.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
And one of the things they tell you in order to strengthen your neural pathways is to learn an instrument.
Yes.
And the one they recommend, you want to guess?
Piano?
Violin.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It is so hard.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard. But let me. In the course of researching for this book, I've stumbled on some real gems, and this one I made up. So I didn't find this, but I was trying to figure out how to explain the importance of learning music. Okay, and here's how I figured out, because music and math and neuroscience are all linked.
Interrelated.
They're all interrelated, but nobody really understands those linkages. So what I figured out is that the reason I am so happy playing the piano versus, let's say, my wife or friends who've learned, technically they're much better than me because they learned formally. Mm-hmm. They don't enjoy playing the piano because they're not technically correct.
Right.
So the difference, I think, is that you don't learn to play the piano. You can technically correct, learn the piano. I play the piano to learn. So you don't learn to play. You play to learn. I have fun.
I love that.
And I learn as a result, which is very different than setting out to learn it, right?
And I think maybe that's why I'm enjoying it so much more, because I used to hate it. You know, did you have lessons as a child?
It was dreadful.
Did you get rapped on the knuckles?
Yeah, smack your knuckles.
Yes.
Intimidating.
And you have to sit there, and your mom was at the time, and you do your scales, you know, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I didn't like it.
But some of the best pianists in the world are, well, maybe not the best in the world, but some incredible pianists are completely untrained, but they played to learn.
Yes.
And they had fun doing it. Einstein said that creativity is intelligence having fun. And when you're...
I like that.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, and it is. When you're playing the piano, it shouldn't be somebody rapping your knuckles, and it shouldn't be painful. It should be fun, and you're expressing yourself. You're creative. It's your intelligence having fun, and you will learn as a byproduct of that fun.
I love to have fun. And like I said, I'm really enjoying my time with, you know, learning to play the violin and, you know, expanding my, you know, skills on the piano. I started to record. One of my coworkers had a baby, and I just learned how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I started to record it, and it was so bad. I was like, I cannot send this to that precious little baby. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there. I don't care. I love it, and I'm learning. So it's always learning. I just love to learn. I'm always reading 5 books at a time. You know, it's just one of those things. I cannot believe. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
I heard a rumor that you are up for a really big award.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's talk about the Folsom Award.
Yeah, the Folsom Distinguished Leadership Award from the Methodist Hospital System in Dallas is a very big honor that they are
That is
recognizing.
amazing. That is amazing. And so when is the award ceremony?
This Friday
This Friday.
at the Anatole. Yeah.
So we're probably by the time this airs, we will have missed it.
Yep.
But we'll cheer on the other 1,000, 1,500 people that are going to be there to celebrate the greatness that is Jim Keys.
I just put one foot in front of the other every day, and
Some people would find that hard to believe.
yeah, I know, but it's true, and I think it was really a blessing to grow up the way I grew up, because
Yeah.
I can't take myself that seriously. I mean, I kind of know how to use an outhouse. It's kind of like, I may think I'm fancy, I can dress like this, but
That's awesome. But you can still use an outhouse.
I can still use an outhouse, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask you one of our VIP questions because I'm really curious. I get some really great thought leaders here, and I want to know what you do differently in the mornings. So what is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
Yeah, it's getting personal now, even after I brush my teeth or before.
You just was the first. What is one thing you? Well, I'm glad you brush your teeth in the morning. That's a positive.
Yeah. No, I think that there is something to reflection, taking a moment and reflecting. And this morning, in particular, I had a prolonged period that I felt like I needed to do that, and it's. Call it prayer, call it meditation. In my case, it is prayer. Maybe a little meditation in there too. I remember hearing the Dalai Lama one time at the Aspen Institute, and got to meet him. And
Wow.
yeah, it was really cool. But the man has an incredible sense of peace about him, and it's just feel it.
Yeah.
Really, this happiness, joy, peace. And I was curious about it, and I heard his speech, and yeah, blah, blah. So I talked to he had a French guy, interestingly, that was kind of his manager that was there with him. And I got a chance to chat with him off to the side while the Dalai Lama was on stage. I said, come on, what is it? What's he do? Come on, really? And he said, no, I'll tell you what it is. It's pretty simple. He wakes up at 3 a.m. and he meditates for 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, it's all seeking inner peace and happiness. And he said, it's not, this isn't for show. Nobody knows this, but I see it, and it's every single day. And it's that sort of balancing that, we all get busy running big companies. You don't have time to stop. And I think I'll meditate, But there's always those moments that you can grab, and I think that helps, keeps me balanced.
I love that you said that. Are you familiar with The Miracle Morning, the book? This was a book written by Hal Elrod, and he interviewed some of the biggest leaders like Warren Buffett and stuff like that to find out what they did differently to set their day up for success, which that's the reason I asked that question, because I want to know too.
Yeah.
And meditation was by far one of the meditation or reflection or quiet time or prayer. And I think that is such an important piece that a lot of people miss, because you've got to get that inner landscape under control. You got to quiet that chaos.
Yeah.
And that's
especially this one.
Yeah, our inner critics are nasty. They are nasty. How do people find you? How do they find your book?
I am jameswkeys.com. I've got a website out there that has links to the book. I've got kind of a cool program underway right now that people might want to check out. It's educationisfreedombook.com. So it's the title of the book.
Okay.
.com, educationisfreedombook.com. And the reason I encourage people to check that out is I just did a deal with Mr. Beast.
I heard about that.
Isn't that cool?
Congratulations. That's huge.
It's more than huge. This kid is as big as Netflix.
Yeah,
He's like,
that is huge.
yeah, 26 years old. He's got 250 million subscribers, not just followers, subscribers. And they're all young people who are hungry for entertainment, yes, but they're learning from him. He is out there teaching kids philanthropy.
Yeah.
Because he's doing cool things. He's drilling water wells in Africa, and he's he's bringing patients in from macular degeneration and helping them see. And so he did this thing at Ron Clark Academy at Atlanta. He brought in 800 teachers from around the country, and he taught them, or he didn't. He brought them in, and they learned at the Ron Clark Academy these techniques that have been so wildly successful at that one school. So he can create now 800 schools with success to help kids. So his people, I've been talking to them for a few months, and they offered me the opportunity to partner up. And he picked up my book and he said to his audience, to his 250 million, read this book, and this is the best part, post a video in your own words that says why education is freedom.
Oh, man.
So I've got thousands and thousands of kids from all over the world. We're getting videos in from Argentina, from Turkey, from all over the world, with kids telling kids that education is important to them.
That is
Isn't that cool?
incredible. That is congratulations on so many fronts. Congratulations on pursuing your career, on having such a wonderful impact on the world, but not even stopping there, but continuing to have such a wonderful impact on the world.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm having a blast.
That's what matters.
Yeah, I have no idea how or why I get to do these things. Just that, the more I learn, the more I get to do. And now I've got a book helping other people learn to learn.
I love that. Well, Jim, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for sharing so much wisdom and so much knowledge. And I have just one last thing to say to you. You are a VIP.
I even have a mug to prove it.
You do.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.